Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my bow dual-wield Stamina Nightblade damage over time build for the Elder Scrolls Online. This is a really interesting build that I actually put together from suggested sets that you guys suggested to me on Twitter. So I rose to the challenge and I tried out some of these sets that you guys recommended, and well, I came up with a really interesting build. We have got not only a ton of damage over time, but we've got all the debuffs in the book, a ton of buffs on ourselves, a lot more than Nightblade normally gets, and on top of it, we've got quite an impressive amount of healing power on this build. And not only do we have all that dirty damage over time, but we actually have a decent amount of burst on this build. So on top of all this really nasty stuff, we can actually hit people for some pretty hard combos. And there you see on this poor guy there, we just spike him as he goes for the res. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this build. If you do, hit that like button. If you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button. I create regular ESO content, so be sure to stick around for more. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at that build. So to begin, I am a Khajiit on this build. This is just the race that I have for my Nightblade. I just like Khajiit in general because Nightblades are usually crit focused, and Khajiit is just a great flexible magicka and stamina crit build. However, for this particular spec, I think Wood Elf would be a little bit better because of the penetration they get on dodge roll. It's just going to up the damage that we deal and actually give us a little bit more healing power when we take a look at the sets in this build. But Khajiit is still a really good option nonetheless, and I think Orc would also be not a terrible choice too. Redguard would also be pretty good too. So it's really up to you, but I think Wood Elf at the end of the day kind of wins this fight. Now, taking a look at our max stat here, we have got all our points in stamina, a whopping 31k stamina. We've got 21k HP, 20k on our front bar, and then 12,000, almost 500 magicka. Now, our HP is a little bit on the low side, and ideally, I would actually like to run more tri-stat Hacky Joes on this build. I'm just not running them at the moment because, well, I didn't have the funds to buy them, and that's what happens. So I would actually recommend that you run a few more so you're sitting at least 22k HP. 21k is a little bit squishy. You could push more. You could push 23k plus if you want, if you run full Hacky Joes. So it's really up to the user, but I would recommend having a little bit more HP than we have here. The 30k stam is more than enough for this build. We deal a ton of damage, and you'll see where the damage is coming from as we take a look at the sets that we're running. Taking a look at the regen on this build, I'm going to buff up with the potion. We have got 1180 magicka recovery, 283 health, and 2164 stam. Good magicka recovery, not anything super crazy. Our only mag dump is going to be cloak, so we also actually have race against time, but that's fairly cheap, and we're not going to use it super often. Most of the time the mag dump is going to be cloak, so that's mostly for that. And then the stam recovery at 2100. We definitely need some good stam sustain on this build. The health recovery is really low. We are a vampire, and that's why. Taking a look at the weapon damage on this build, we're still buffed up from the potion. I'm going to go into cloak. We've got 3,949 weapon damage with 52.8% crit. Now, we do get the minor crit chance bonus as well, so fully buffed, we're actually sitting at just shy of 60% crit on this build, around 59% crit. And the 3,900 weapon damage that we have, this actually goes up to 4,600 weapon damage because of our infused back bow on the back bar here. So we get a pretty decent amount of weapon damage and maximum stam, and we're playing a full damage over time build. So that actually means that we have a decent amount of burst, but nothing super crazy. A lot of our damage on this build is going to come from all the dots and debuffs that we can stack. Now, taking a look at the physical spell resist and the crit resist on this build, they're actually not too shabby. We've got almost 19k spell and physical resist, and then 3,100 crit resist, which is pretty freaking sweet, I think. Now, you could run more well-fitted on this build if you want, give you a little bit more stam sustain if you feel like you need it, but 3k crit resist is just great. It's just going to keep us bulky and prevent us from getting bursted. Now, taking a look at the Mundus we're actually going for the Atronach Mundus here, and that's just because this build needed the mag recovery. If you wanted to run a Mundus like the Lover to give us more penetration, which would probably be the best damage increasing Mundus here, you could just do that and then swap out one of your damage glyphs for more magicka recovery, but it's really up to the user how you want to do it. I think that this way is probably the best way to go because this way you get the most healing power too, and you need to have some pretty good healing power on this build. Now, we are also a stage damage for Vampire on this spec, and I think Vampire is just important mostly for the regen. If we didn't have Vampirism, we'd have to give up some damage. You could actually cut the damage and not go Vampire if you really wanted, but ideally I think Vampire is the way to go. It just gives us the best sustain that we can get, and the speed passives are really nice. We're also running a heal over time build, so outside of fighting something like a Dragon Knight, this is great for our build because Undeath and heals over time synchronize really well with each other. Now for the consumable on this build, we are actually using kind of an exotic food here, but it's building in popularity lately. The Lava Foot Soup and Saltress. This gives us max stam and stamina recovery. Just a huge amount of both, and this is all that we need for the build. Now, I didn't want to run the gold standard food that people run or the dubious Cameron Throne just because I, well, wanted to maximize what the Vampire could take advantage of here, and maximizing that stamina to give us damage too, I think was the way to go. Now, for the potions on this build, you definitely need to go with the essence of weapon power. We are doing bow dual wield, and we're not using flying blades, so we don't have access to any of the buffs that we need. We're going to get them all from the potion, and this is really important because it opens up our skill kit to allow us to run all the debuffs in the world. We're going to get the best damage we can here, and we still have good healing power on this build, so we don't need to worry too much about not getting some healing from our potion. So let's take a look at the sets we're running on this build. The first set that we have is actually Slime Craw. This is going to give us Weapon Crit and Minor Berserk, and I picked Slime Craw for a few reasons. Well, first of all, Nightblade doesn't have the Minor Berserk anymore, so this is going to give it to us, which is really nice. The Weapon Crit, also really great. That's going to give us bonus to our healing power. The Minor Berserk, believe it or not, will give us a little bit of a bonus to our healing power too, and we'll get into how it's doing that. And the next set that we have is the Vice Cannon set. Now, this is a set that you guys recommended me to try. Two of the sets in this build, two of the big sets we use, are the recommended sets you guys wanted me to try, and Vice Cannon is interesting. So we get max stam, weapon damage, stam recovery. When we deal critical damage to an enemy from sneak, we inject a leeching poison that deals 18k, almost 19k damage over 15 seconds and heals us for 100% of the damage done. So this is why a set like Slime Craw will heal us, and why something like having more penetration can increase our healing done. This thing procs out of Cloak. You don't have to actually be in Sneak. It works from Cloak. Now, I hope that ZeniMax doesn't change this, because this makes this set very attractive, and if it only procs from Sneak, it's honestly not a very good set. But because it procs from Cloak, it allows us to really utilize this set. You can proc it on multiple targets as well, so as long as you keep opening on people, you can just stack them with these damage over time that heal you, and you can get a lot of healing power out of this set at all times. So this is a very important set, not only for our damage, but for our healing as well. Now, the next set that we have is the Assassin's Guile, and, well, this is a set I've always wanted to use in PvP, but I never have, because I just never got around to trying it. I never thought up a build where I was like, hey, Assassin's Guile is definitely the set to go for. This is the build. Now, this set you guys also recommended that I should use, and I was like, hey, we're going to make it work. We paired it with the Vice Cannon, and we've got a pretty nasty poison setup here. We've got 2 health drain poisons here, so it's going to deal the poison damage over time and heal us as well, and both of these can crit. We are a Khajiit, so we get to take advantage of that extra crit healing and damage, and on top of it, we inflict Minor Defile on our opponent. This makes up for the fact that we're not running Snipe for that Minor Defile, and we get the Minor Vitality for 8% healing taken. This is going to buff all our healing, including our Vice Cannon healing. Yeah, man, so much set synergy on this build. Such an interesting dot build, and I'm so happy that you guys recommended these sets, because it finally got me around to trying this build out. This poison is what makes this all work, man. We get 4 seconds additional duration on the poison. If we swap to the bow bar, you guys see it's only like 2 seconds duration on this poison. Very powerful, but with the Assassin's Guile, man, this changes everything. It makes this such a good poison, and we can really push what it can do. We can put a lot of pressure on people and make it very hard for them to come back. Now, the next set that we have is the Black Rose Bow, and this is on our back bar here. This is because we are using Draining Shot as our primary stun for the build. Draining Shot's such a good skill. It's going to heal us, and now apply an additional damage over time, just stacking with the dots that we have on this build. And, of course, for the traits, we've got Infused with the weapon spell damage on this bow. Absolutely fantastic for a bow bar on a medium armor build, just giving us that extra damage and healing when we swap to our main bar. On the front bar here, we've got Nirnhoned on the main axe with Sharpened on the back axe. I really like Nirnhoned here because it still allows us to have some good healing and burst on our front bar, which is really important, I think. And the Sharpened, of course, is going to allow us to utilize both the burst and the damage over time from this build. So yeah, really nice stuff. Now, taking a look at the jewelry on this build, we've got full infused because this is crafted jewelry. It's very easy to make the infused. Unfortunately, it's only blue, which is not the best, but in medium armor, it's okay because we are a Nightblade. We get an extra 10% bonus. Still probably better than robust, but if you guys want, you can definitely just go robust here. It also opens up you running different traits on your weapon or on your jewelry, sorry, if you feel like you need to add more sustain or something to the build. Now, taking a look at the gear, guys, like I said, ideally, I would actually run full tri-stat Hacky Joe on this build. I just didn't have the means to equip everything, so I only had the 3 Hacky Joe here. So we would have a little bit more HP and a little bit more mag, but we'd have a little bit less stamina. We hit plenty hard, so I don't think it's a big deal that we lose that bit of stam. Full impen on the traits, I would recommend either full impen or 1 or 2 well-fitted if you want to add it to the build. Now, let's take a look at the abilities we're running on the build. We're going to start off on our dual wield bar here. First skill that we have is Blood Craze, and yeah, just more synergy with the build. This is going to be our primary damage over time. Nice 13k tooltip when we're unbuffed here. This, of course, gets nice and high when we fully buff up and debuff our opponent. We also heal for 1500 health every 2 seconds for the duration, so it adds another heal over time on top of everything else. So if we come out of Cloak on this build and we just do a Blood Craze out of Cloak, and the potion procs, we put 4 heal over time on ourselves and 4 damage over time on the opponent, assuming the axe bonus bleed doesn't proc. Really, really good skill for this build. It's also very cheap, but this is pretty much our primary killer skill. It does require us to get in melee range though, but that's okay because it's part of the combo. Taking a look at the next skill, we've got Ambush. Very important for our damage over time build. Not only is it going to be a gap closer, so it allows us to get on top and apply the blood craze dot, but it'll apply minor vulnerability. This is another negative effect, and it increases the damage our opponent takes by 8%. This, in turn, can increase some of the healing we get from Vice Cannon, and it just increases the damage of everything we do, our bursts and our dots. We get Empower on our next light attack as well. Really strong stuff for this build. 8 seconds is a nice long duration on the minor vulnerability too, so we can stack just more negative effect on our target, making it hard for them to purge off all the dots that we can spit out. Now, the next skill that we have is Killer's Blade, and this is actually the execute for the build. The reason I put this here is because we're playing a dot build, and having an execute is actually really useful, because if we can't bleed the opponent out and they're really tanky, this allows us to finish them off if we can get them really low. This is mostly for things like Mag Sork and really tanky targets that are going to be tough to take down. If you don't want to run this skill, this is probably the best flex spot for a skill on this build. Now, the next ability we have is Race Against Time. This is fantastic because it gives us a few things that this build is missing. The first one is Minor Force. We don't have that crit damage buff, and we've got a lot of stuff that can crit. The poisons can crit, our axe bleeds can crit. The only thing that can't crit is actually just the Vice Cannon set. So Race Against Time is a very important buff for this build, especially at the 60% buffed up crit rate that we have. So not only does it give us that, though, it also gives us the Snare and Immobilize immunity. Now, you could go for the other morph of this and give up the Snare Immobilize immunity, but because we're not running Shade, I definitely think you should keep Race Against Time on this build, just to make sure you have an answer if you get yourself locked down by something. Now, the next skill that we've got is Piercing Mark, and this is also a very important skill for this build. Not only is this going to be great for killing enemy Nightblades, which is really important, but it debuffs your opponent, putting the Major Fracture and the Major Breach on them, and the invisibility stealth detect that you put on them is also another negative effect. So even if your opponent's not a Nightblade, if they're a Templar or something, it's just another negative effect they have to purge, allowing more of your dots to stay on them when they try to counter you with Purge. But that debuff, very important. The Stealth Detect allows you to shut down enemy Nightblades. Their best counter to damage over time is Cloak, and this prevents them from re-entering Cloak successfully because you can just keep pulling them out. Really, really good stuff. Definitely the way to go for this build. Now, for the ultimate, we have got Incapacitating Strike. This is for two big reasons. Number one, it's a great burst ult, and we have enough firepower to actually utilize a burst ult on this build. If we have an opponent that's lower on health and they're a little squishier, we can nuke them down on this spec. Even though we are a dot build, we've got a little bit of leeway into the other side. Now, on top of it, your opponent will take 20% more damage from your attacks for 6 seconds. This is a huge deal for a damage over time build. This makes all of our dots tick harder for the 6 seconds. On a 70 ultimate cooldown, it allows us to have a very powerful dot rotation with this ultimate. Now, if we allow ourselves to get up to that 120 ultimate, we can apply the 3 seconds of silence too. Also fantastic if we can get it up there. It's a really good ultimate to help us bring down any Magicka user, which is probably our biggest weakness, is probably something like Mag DK and Mag Sork, and that'll come really handy against those guys. And on top of it, we gain Reeve, so we get a little bit of resource back if we are light and heavy attacking someone with a negative effect on them. Of course they're going to have a negative effect on them. This build just craps them out, so we can really utilize that on the Nightblade there. Now, taking a look at our bow bar, the first ability we have is Poison Injection. This is our execute dot. It's just going to deal a lot of damage as our opponent's health begins to drop. And yeah, we get some pretty nasty Poison Injection ticks on this build. We were getting like 6k crit ticks on players in PvP to finish them off. So really nasty stuff. And that's exactly what we want. The next ability we have is Draining Shot. This is a lot of things. It's our primary stun. It's a fantastic burst heal. While you're kiting with your bow, you don't really need to use Vigor as long as you're Draining Shot stunning the targets that are trying to attack you. It's going to deal a decent amount of upfront damage, and it's going to apply the damage over time because we have the Black Rose bow. So just another dot to put on your opponent on this build. Now, taking a look at our next skill, we've got Resolving Vigor. This is the primary heal for the build, and I know you guys are a little worried that it won't be very strong. 14.4k tooltip on our bow bar, and on the dual wield bar, we get up to a, what do we got here? 16k Vigor on the Nightblade. Now, this is not a crazy strong Vigor, but it's not terrible either. We've got a lot of healing power coming in from all of our heal over time that we get from the dots, man. We get 4 different heal over time on this build, from our Blood Craze, from our Poisons, and from the Vice Cannon set. So, you know, I don't think that having a little bit of a weaker Vigor is a huge deal. We also get that minor mending buff, so this will actually go up by another 8%, so we'll have a 17k plus Vigor tooltip, which is starting to look a little bit better. So we've got some pretty decent healing power on this build. So yeah, it's actually a lot better than it looks. I guess that's all I can really say. Moving on to our next skill here, we've got Concealed Weapon, and I went with this just for that passive slot movement speed in stealth. Very important to stay mobile on the Nightblade. Look at how fast we can move when we go into Cloak on this build. Really nice stuff. We've got nothing else invested into speed outside of that. If you play this build on a Bosmer, you'll be even faster, which is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, it's pretty much there for the passive slot. If you don't want to run it this way, you can put Shade here instead. It's either this or Shade this patch. It's kind of up to you. Moving on to the next ability, we've got Shadowy Disguise, and this is, of course, our primary access to stealth. We're going to use this to proc our Vice Cannon set. Our next attack out of Cloak is going to be a guaranteed critical strike, just making sure that we proc the Vice Cannon as well. Really, really nice stuff, and it's going to be our primary kite, our primary mobility, just fantastic Nightblade skill all around. And then finally, for the ultimate on the back bar, I went and grinded out Temporal Guard. We get that minor protection, and we can teleport back to where we were 4 seconds ago. Really fantastic survival ultimate, and I really like this choice because we're not using Shade. It gives us kind of an ability like Shade. It's actually a little bit better than Shade, but Shade is pretty close to Temporal Guard. Honestly, Shade's a really good skill, but now we have that combo of really fast stealth and that really strong teleport. That minor protection is what I really like from this skill too. 8% reduced incoming damage, really fantastic for PvP. Stacking with our heal over time and our healing buffs. Really nice stuff, something the Nightblade normally doesn't have access to. Now, taking a look at the champion points on this build, guys, starting off in the tower tree, we've got 61 Warlord, 5 Sprinter, and nothing in Bashing Focus. Lots in Warlord because we've got to break free. A little bit in Sprinter. Honestly, you could put a little bit more in here if you want. And I got nothing in Bashing Focus, but I probably should put a little bit in here just because we want to proc the poison on our front bar. So weaving in the bash is always a good idea, just to give the extra chance to proc that poison. So ideally, maybe take a few points out of Warlord and put him in there. But moving on to the next tree here, we got 64 Mooncalf and 56 Arcanist. Big focus on Stam Recovery, followed up by the Mag Recovery. Our two primary sustains. Not a lot in heavy attacks because we've got pretty good sustain, and nothing in health recovery because we are a vampire. Wind Running is absolutely great. We get 2% movement speed, 10% Magicka recovery while we sprint. Just going to help us cloak more, proc that Vice Cannon more. Just good stuff all around. Now, moving on to the next tree. In the Shadow Tree, we got 56 in Tumbling and 28 in Shadow Ward. We've got to roll a lot, and we've got to block in PvP, both very important. Medium Armor, we're going to do more rolling, though. You can run a couple well-fitted, and you'll have a little bit easier time rolling as well. I don't have anything in Befoul, honestly. I should put some points in here. I should take a few out of Tumbling, a few out of Shadow Ward, and put at least 20 to 30 points in Befoul, if not even more. It's really fantastic for a build like this. Now, moving on to the Apprentice Tree, we've got nothing. In the Atronach, we got a measly 40. This is just for our burst, and that's it. And then in the Ritual Tree, we've absolutely stacked it. 72 in Thaum for that damage over time, 51 Precise Strikes, 58 Piercing, and 49 in Mighty. Yeah, man. Big stack in Thaum, but we've kind of equaled it out here. Focus on Piercing for that penetration, very important, but we've got to have that that just upfront physical damage. And that critical damage and healing, also really nice. But yeah, mostly in Thaum. Now, the important passives we get here, Perfect Strike for that 9% weapon crit. Last Stand, we get the Major Heroism when we drop below 20% HP. Both really nice for PvP, so you can't go wrong with that. Moving on to our Steed Tree here, we've got 61 Ironclad, 22 Spell Shield, 59 Resistant, and 29 in Medium Armor Focus. Nice big stack here, lots of focus on crit resist and reducing incoming direct damage. Both of these are the biggest incoming sources of burst in PvP, and our biggest weakness on a build like this is definitely burst. We have a good answer to damage over time with our pretty strong healing power, as well as our cloak, so yeah, these are definitely the points we want to stack. Little bit Spell Shield, Medium Armor Focus, just to bulk up our resistance stats as well. Now, taking a look at the Lady Tree, we got 11 Thick Skin, 32 Hardy, and 32 Elemental Defender. Big focus on Hardy Elemental, just to reduce incoming physical and magical damage we take. But some in Thick Skin as well, because we don't want to get hit by too much damage over time. Honestly, you could put no points here if you want, but we do have a pretty good counter to dots, like I said. I just thought I'd put a few here. And then we've got 32 in Quick Recovery for that healing power. Very important. And that is the build, ladies and gentlemen. All right, everyone. Let's take a look at that PvP commentary. So to start off here, we're just going to have a little bit of a solo fight. The enemy Nightblade I see in stealth there. We just kind of wait with our block up for the enemy Nightblade to come out. This guy jumps off his horse. I mark him, but he doesn't do anything. He's just watching, so I'm just being patient here and waiting for the enemy yellow to come out. There the Nightblade comes out. We ended up dodging the attack with the initial roll, and we're just going to try to mark up the Nightblade right away. I am running the piercing mark, of course, and it works really well with this build, not only to counter Nightblades, but to really force them to eat the dots. There you see we get kind of a weird laggy stun on our draining shot there. The enemy Nightblade taking quite a bit of damage from our dots, but he heals himself up, and he moves back into his group here, and we're just going to have to be careful. The DK chain coming in, we get a good block on the chain, and then right back into the cloak. Thank God we are on the Nightblade, and we have cloak, so we don't have to try to roll away from that chain and get ourselves pulled. And I work my way back into the tower here, and I'm just going to see how many of these yellow will follow me. So once we get into the tower here, I open up on these guys with the bow here, just kind of putting a few poison injections down, hitting people with the stun. This guy, very squishy. We just dot him up right away, give him a little bit of a poke there, and down he goes. And we just move right on to the next target there, marking him as we go to. But we take quite a bit of pressure, quite a lot of snares there. And here we go for the precognition, really good precog, and then go back around the other side and back into cloak. Honestly, our ultimate is very strong on this build, but we have a lot of firepower outside of it, so we don't really need it to close kills on most things. So using the precognition often on this build, I think, is really good, especially if you have a lot of opponents. And here we see we find another opponent. We dot him up with the stun into the poison injection, and then we hit the dual wield dot up on him, and he just slowly bleeding out as he falls down here. He keeps getting back into cloak. Oh my gosh, there we mark him so he can't get back. The ambush on top. and down he goes, and we just cloak back up, and we're going to head back into the tower here, and you guys can just see the insane amount of damage over time we have on this build. Once we get someone fully dotted up, it is very deadly for them. There we see the draining shot into the poison injection, and now we switch to the other target here, and then we dot him up, we mark him as well, and this guy actually goes for his own purge. He's a Stamina Templar. Now the thing about Stamina Templar on a build like this is they usually can't spam purge too much. Really good precog there, so if we can just keep dotting up the Stamplars, we can put enough pressure on them that they won't be able to purge off those effects eventually, and we have got more than enough effects to spam. The yellow players decide to ditch out of here, but a Nightblade waits in here for me, and he opens as I try to clear up some of these NPCs. I counter the Nightblade stealth by holding block on my part so he can't hit me with the huge combo, get a good counter stun there and dot him up, and then I drop down to the bottom and he chases me back down here too. He's following me up the side. We hit him with the good stun there into the poison injection, switch to the dual wield, go for the dot up with the blood craze, and just look at him tick away, hit him with the ultimate, and he goes down right away. We don't even have to hit a super hard ultimate there, just the bonus damage on our dot ticks. Everything's going to stack, and we do a lot of extra damage, so I work my way outside, and we run into a few blue players here. They ride by on their horses, but there are quite a few more blue players. I take a lot of damage from just getting surrounded there, kind of caught with my pants down. I try to stealth away from here. We're very low on resource. We go for another clutch precog, just really helping out for the fact that we don't have that shade, and we're going to stealth back out this way. Lots of movement speed and stealth as well, so we can break some good distance there, and we quickly dot this guy up. Right away, the draining shot into the poison injection doing a nice amount of damage to him, and this guy here is just trying to get his way back there. We dot this next player up here, just opening up on him. We get cursed by that lower level Sork, and this Templar here goes into his ultimate. I just bounce a couple heavies off. We hit him with the next stun again, and I go on top of him with the ambush into the ultimate there. We get him with the dual wield damage over time as well. His health is very, very low. I miss the execute. He hits the roll there. Really good dodge on his part, and he manages to run away, and I just turn around and focus on the guys that are behind me here. I just want to be aware of my surroundings because there are quite a few players on both factions fighting here. This is not where my faction is supposed to be fighting. And I start to fight these two blue players here. I just go for a little bit of a kite, just wanting to break a little bit of distance from them, get back into stealth as the curse expires there, and then hit the guy with the draining shot and put a little bit of dot damage in. One of the guys I get a good stun on there, just kind of gauging this team there. This guy here is already taking quite a bit of damage. We go for the ambush on top into the ultimate. He gets melted through his block. Oh my god, the poor guy. And we're just going to reopen on these guys here. And they actually end up just slowly kiting their way back here. I just keep dotting them up, trying to follow them here. But they kind of turn tail and head towards the rest of the group inside the keep. And me, well, you guys know how I do. I just run in there and get myself killed. But we're going to move on to the next fight that we have for you guys here instead. I've actually got something a little bit different than what we normally see in the build videos, but I wanted to show off an anti-gank. So here you see the enemy gank come in. We just break the stun, go into our heal here, and I mark him right away so he can't get back in stealth. There we dot him up, and I follow it up with another mark. There's only 5 seconds on that stealth detect, so I'm rotating the mark on this guy so he can't re-enter stealth, and just look at the dots, tick him away, get him with another stun there, and the ultimate to finish him off. Really clean stuff, just showing off the damage and the amount of pressure we can put up, and while anti-ganking as well, so really nice stuff. Now for the last clip here, guys, I've got a few nice little kills for you too. We're just at the back line of a blue group sieging this yellow keep here, and we're going to open up on this squishy player there. There you see right away we hit him with the bleed off the blood craze. Oh my gosh, man, he just melts. That was like one attack. He just did not have anything to deal with that. No healing power, nothing. Down he goes, and we just mark the next guy up. We hit him with a good stun there, and we just keep dotting them up. Now, if you guys are wondering what that extra tick is, we do get a bonus tick when we poison the target. The poison status effect is going to be a little bit more damage over time. And on our bow bar, we've got 2 poison attacks, so we have a high chance of applying it on the bow bar here. There you see we dot this guy up. We hit him with the mark right away. He doesn't have the healing power, man. We got a nice dot up there, and just finish him off with the ambush there. The minor vulnerability that it applies, man, we're just doing so much damage. This guy just running around low on HP. We're quickly going to cap him off with our ultimate there, and this other player tries to pull us out of stealth. We hit him with the counter stun, get a good block off on the other Nightblade coming out of stealth there too, and we go back on top of this Dragon Knight there, just keep hitting him with the dots, and he's got some pretty good healing healing power, but man, look at this. We're actually doing some nice wear and tear to him. We go for the ultimate there. He gets some huge heals from the rest of the players there, and he just keeps going down. Oh my gosh, there he goes. We actually get the kill on him there. The damage over time just finishing him off, and we're going to keep working our way back out the other end here as the blue group turns around and decides to start chasing us. And once I get back behind the tent here, I just reset with the heavy attack, and a single player follows here. We just dot him up right away. He's fairly chunky, but just look at the pressure we can put on. We just rotate all the dots on him, make sure to debuff him, and just keep rotating the vulnerability. There's the ultimate into the execute. Down he goes like a squishy. Nice stuff. So I'm going to let the rest of the fight play out for you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys like this build, hit that like button. If you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button. We've got more coming in the future, regular uploads for you guys. We feature community builds as well as top 5 PvP commentaries. If you want to send in anything to be featured on the channel, you can send it to KristoferESO@hotmail.com. If you guys want to catch some live stuff from me, you can always check out my Twitch, link of course in the description below. We are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They give me better ping to my favorite games, and they're free to try for the first 14 days. No credit card to sign up. So if you guys want to give them a shot, no harm, no foul. And finally, guys, if you really love the show and you want to help support it, you can always become a patron on Patreon. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this job that I love so much. So thank you guys so much just for watching. Thank you guys for helping out if you do. And have a great night, everyone. I hope you liked the build, and I'll see you next time.